Welcome to the First Round Fantasy Podcast, your first choice for second round advice, with your hosts, Gabriel Miramontes and Jacob Bartley.
Pearl on 3rd and 7. Jefferson hauls it in. Would be Max Crosby. Touchdown, San Francisco.
Jacob Bartley, where are you? It's just Gabriel Miramontes today. Welcome on into the First Round Fantasy Podcast, your home for second round advice. Yes, absent, incognito, not incognito, just absent in general. Jacob Bartley not here today. I'm holding down the fort, which means it's going to be a quicker video than usual. However, if there is any productivity in the chat, I will always stick around. I love to talk it out. But it's a little lonely in the offseason for us. We're still small. We're figuring it out. So I'll hammer this one out today. We've already talked about Dynasty running backs, our top 7 there, kind of our top 10. We've already talked about our Dynasty QBs, top 7, although that was also kind of a top 10. So today we're bringing you our Dynasty wide receiver rankings, our top 7, and again, a few extras, as well as just our general overview of the rookies and their landing spots and what we think about them, and a few highlights, really. With that being said, there's not a lot of news so far in the offseason, or at least at this point. I will say that this is our last episode in the month of May. We will be taking a short break. I truly believe that fantasy football is one of the best things that happen to all people, but everyone should experience it. But you need a break every now and then. You just do. Even you nutheads out there that love it 24/7. I love it 24/7 behind the scenes. Sometimes we need a break. So May and June, we will be off. We will not be around. We're still going to be putting out shorts and posts, value checks, all of those things in the YouTube channel. Just our weekly podcast will not be a thing in the month of May and June. So this is our last podcast. So I guess I should say the last half of May and all of June, you will not be seeing us live on YouTube. But we will pick it up again in July, ramping up for the season. July and August, expect us to start going 2 to 3 days a week. And then when the season comes, 3 days a week live, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Sundays. And Jacob's going to be live on Wednesdays to give you some Dynasty value checks. It's going to be fun, a ton of fun. We recommend you come and say hi. And before you do, or while you do, or if you do, stop in, give us a like, and thank you. We really appreciate it. It does so much for us. You don't understand. Feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. If you see something you like, if you hear something you like, if you don't, come on back. Give us another try. We're always welcome to try new things, hear your thoughts, and we appreciate you listening to ours. And as well, if you get a subscriber live on the show, we give you a big thank you. Air high fives all around. We can't be together in person, but we're together in spirit. We're building a community here, and we appreciate you being a part of it. With that being said, let's jump into the Dynasty wide receiver rankings. There's no person here to dispute against me today. It is just myself, myself, and I. I want to talk about me. I want to talk about Toby Keith style. And number 1, there's really nothing to discuss about. It's Justin Jefferson, wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. He's proven it 2 years in a row now. The only thing that really concerns me about Justin Jefferson, perennial guys that are going to be perennial talents in the NFL for years to come. Devontae Adams, Antonio Brown had a nice stretch. Justin Jefferson is still so young. He's 23 years old. His 2 breakout years came at 21 and 22. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if it happened for those guys. Devontae Adams was horrible for like 3 years when he came into the NFL. Everyone had completely written him off. Now, sure, they might be thinking that, Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw to rookie wide receivers. Jordy Nelson was still there, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. The things that this guy is doing at such a young age is just absolutely remarkable. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's number 1 on our Dynasty rankings, and I can speak for Jacob solely there. And he's bound to be number 1 in a lot of redraft leagues this year. Like, Justin Jefferson is him. I've never understood that. I'm just saying it now. Justin Jefferson is the guy. He's going number 1 in drafts this year, redraft leagues. He should be number 1 in your dynasty rankings, dynasty startup drafts, he's the first wide receiver off the board. I'd say probably there's a case to be made that you can take him number 1 overall. No questions. However, I can see the value of super flex leagues where quarterbacks come into play, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. But 4 or 5? Jacob and I just did a Devy Dynasty draft. He went at 5. And we also did a Dynasty draft not too long ago, which I traded Jacob to come down to number 5. He took my number 5 draft pick. He went with Justin Jefferson there. His value is just so, you can't replicate it across anywhere. I want to pull up the fantasy finishes from last year. And I might be biting myself in the tongue here. Yes, because when you look at them, it really is only a 5-point difference between Justin Jefferson and, oh, wait, nope, this is standard. Let's switch it to PPR. It really is. Now we can see it. Give it here. Oh, yeah. You're talking 27 fantasy points. That's a full game's difference compared to him and Tyreke Hill, the second leading scorer in PPR formats at the wide receiver position last year. And then just a complete tank after that. Stephon Diggs. Devontae Adams was a little closer. And then you're talking about guys that got barely 300 points. So almost 68 points better than the 4th best wide receiver last year. Comparing that to the running back position, those are so scarce, so positional. Austin Eckler, 372 last year, 372 points. So outscored Justin Jefferson last year. But what you have to consider is, running backs, they're not built to last, and that's unfortunate. And then, of course, QBs, every possession lives and runs through them. So there's also going to be some value discrepancy there. Patrick Mahomes, 428 fantasy points last year. Josh Allen, 412. Then Jalen Hurts at 384 is pretty darn close. When you talk about just like what they bring to your team, but again, still 100-point difference in overall fantasy point production. So yes, maybe in a dynasty startup, you're batting an eye or two about taking Justin Jefferson number 1 overall because those quarterbacks are so valuable. But Justin Jefferson, I think he's a strong candidate for this first positional player off the board. Again, I can only assume that this is also Jacob's number 1 consensus pick. So I feel confident in that. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you. Number 3 is where it starts to get a little iffy for me, right? We have a lot of top tier guys. I believe all of these top 7 are guys that you can draft as your number 1 wide receiver and feel confident about it. But I toiled a lot back and forth with this. And, it's a huge consensus too that these 2 guys are 1, 2 back to back. And I started doing a little bit of deep digging, and I agree. So number 2 for me in my dynasty wide receiver rankings is Jamar Chase, wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. Just a lot of boom games last year. 9 games as a wide receiver 1, including 3 games as the wide receiver 1 overall for fantasy. He did it everywhere. And the conversation that really came up with Jamar Chase that I was having with Jacob was, is he this kind of Tyreke Hill light where we get these big boom games and then there are games where he's just kind of phased out? And after doing a little bit of research, and again, we're just looking at sleeper stats, kind of where we had him in our dynasty leagues. And after looking at it, there really isn't too much there. He's actually quite the model of consistency. I'm looking it up here just to reconfirm myself. And his 2022 stats pretty much justify, like I said, 9 wide receiver 1 finishes. Tyreke Hill, to put it in perspective last year, for how good he was, I believe he only had 8 wide receiver 1 finishes. And then you look, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3, 4, 1, 1, 1, 3, 14, 5. I mean, he really was consistent. Only 2 weeks where he was outside the top 35. That's really good. Joe Burrow is only getting better. He is one of the perennial talents at the QB position, something that Justin Jefferson doesn't necessarily have. He has Kirk Cousins. Is he going to be the quarterback next year? We've been saying this for the last 3 years. Is Kirk Cousins the Minnesota Vikings quarterback? We don't necessarily know. But what we do know is that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are connected at the hip for at least the next 5 years. Something will happen to keep them together. And that's what you love to see. Continuity in fantasy football, greats paired with greats. And, I'm not saying draft Jamar Chase over Justin Jefferson. No, not at all. I'm just saying, in 2 years, there's going to be some people taking value checks on Justin Jefferson because they're like, oh, he's got a rookie QB, or, oh, we just traded for this guy, or, oh, the Vikings are going through something, because they're in a really crucial point with their franchise right now where they have to figure out what they want to do with Kirk Cousins. And I think most of us know that he's not the guy. Like, he's not the long-term guy. Of course, they signed him there. He's been the long-term guy for the last 5 or 6 years, but definitely into Justin Jefferson's heyday, right? We're talking 26, 27, 28, where these guys are just the dominant wide receivers that they are, which Justin Jefferson is already doing. Who's going to be his quarterback? So these rankings may or may not change for just not me, but also the community when we start to see the shifting in Minnesota and what happens with Kirk Cousins. But no doubt about it, as of right now, Justin Jefferson, number 1, Jamar Chase, number 2, number 3. This was another kind of debacle for me, but it ended up being quite simple. A.J. Brown, wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's not very often that you are targeted at 17 yards. Your average reception is 17 yards. Like, that is absurd. There's another guy that was just a little bit higher than him, and he's also on my Dynasty wide receiver rankings list in my top 7. But A.J. Brown with Jalen Hurts was something just kind of unseen. Sorry, a buddy's texting me to come look at an open house. I can't wait to have a house one day, folks. Let's just put it that way. I love you, honey. She's not here. But anyways, A.J. Brown, you just got to believe in it. All right. He dealt with some quarterback woes in Tennessee, still found a season where he was able to put up 11 touchdowns and over 1,200 receiving yards. Clearly, the year before he left, he was hampered by injury, bad quarterback play. First year with Jalen Hurts, you can clearly see this has a Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow feel to it, where these guys are going to stay together for a long time, at least in the Dynasty perspective, right? That 4 to 5 year window that we're looking for. And it's going to be magical. There's going to be some really good things to witness here. And you can't predict TDs. You can't. But in 2 of his last 4 seasons, he's produced 11 touchdowns, 11 receiving touchdowns. And that's pretty good. He had also 9 and 5 the year before that. And we have to mention that that was the year he was barred by injury, Tannehill in and out, blah, blah, blah. So I just think you can't go wrong with A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts is here to stay. A.J. Brown is here to stay. Whereas these last few guys that are kind of that I'm going to talk about, and of course, Justin Jefferson at the top, we don't know what their future looks like because of their quarterback position. And you'll start to see how it gets a little bit interesting. And sure, I'm going to talk about a few guys where you're like, what are you talking about? They have stable quarterbacks. Yes, they do. But it doesn't mean that questions haven't floated around. They're not perennial guys. Okay. And I keep using that word today. You just want to look for that continuity. You want to see the vision, right? You want it to all look good. Justin Jefferson looks great. Next to Kirk Cousins, you're like, he's fine, Now imagine Justin Jefferson, I don't know, with Joe Burrow, with Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes. Now you're just going out of your mind. So you kind of piece those two together, and that's kind of what gets me thinking. And that's what fluctuates my Dynasty rankings here today. That's kind of one of the biggest discrepancies that I looked at is who is paired with a perennial quarterback who's going to succeed for a long time. Okay, so number 1, Justin Jefferson, no complaints. Number 2, Jamar Chase, no real complaints. Number 3, A.J. Brown. There were some complaints there. Now let's go to number 4 on our Dynasty rankings. And again, Jacob, any thoughts? No thoughts from Jacob today. That's okay. I don't want to even hear his voice when I mention this next because it's his boy who I'm sure he has a little bit higher. and that is not Jamar. That is CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. He is my number 4 in my dynasty rankings, behind A.J. Brown, behind Jamar Chase, and behind Justin Jefferson. Listen, the Cowboys were 19th in passing offense last year, and that didn't stop it. I'm not saying that's mediocre. That's middle of the road, clearly. And CeeDee Lamb was absolutely remarkable. Don't get me wrong, okay? But that was with Kellen Moore, a guy who likes to throw the ball deep, a guy that likes to throw the ball a lot, and they still were only middle of the pack. CeeDee Lamb is clearly talented. I think he's one of the best route runners in this group of guys that I'm talking about today. He could definitely be number 2 off the board, I think, as high in some cases compared to Jamar Chase. He could definitely be number 3 off the board. But I was talking about quarterbacks recently, and Dak Prescott is a guy that's been in discussions before, right? He's injured. Sure, that happens. We get it. But his name has also been, at least for the last 2 years, this is a make or break a year. Last year when they weren't succeeding, it was him or Mike McCarthy. Who's going to get the cut? Luckily, they figured it out. They made the playoffs, whatever. The year before that, it's him or Mike McCarthy or bust. Like, someone's got to go. Okay, I get that. But 12.1 yards per reception. Clearly, that's behind A.J. Brown. That was behind Jamar Chase. And it was behind Justin Jefferson. You're talking about these guys. I mean, just put it into perspective of A.J. Brown, right? Wide receivers, 1 point every 15 receiving yards. So A.J. Brown in a PPR league is averaging 2 points per every pass, whereas Jamar Chase, or CeeDee Lamb, I should say, is averaging 1.2 yards every 1.3, 1.4 yards. Those matter, right? Decimal point leagues. Listen to me out, hear me out. But the real big thing here is the loss of Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator. He now finds himself in San Diego, where obviously we all see big things for Justin Herbert. A huge rebound year for him coming up. But specifically staying in Dallas, Mike McCarthy has already come out and said that they want to establish the run. Now, yes, they let go of Ezekiel Elliott. They could very much sign him back. There's still a lot of time. Right now, you have Ronald Jones and Deuce Vaughn, 6th-round rookie draft selection, backing up Tony Pollard. This is Tony Pollard's backfield. I personally don't believe he's like a 300 carry type of guy. I don't think he has the frame for that. So they could look to supplement that in free agency. There are guys like Leonard Fournette still out there, although I think him and Zeke, like one of the same, right? But there's notable names out there that could hinder Tony Pollard's fantasy success, because now we're talking a little bit about that running game, but it does translate to CeeDee Lamb. Yes, he might be the only option there. Okay, they just acquired Brandon Cooks. That's great. I actually think that helps him. But, Dak made some mistakes last year. They're going to look to run the ball a lot more. And what does that mean for CeeDee Lamb's fantasy value? I think he takes a hit. Last year, let's pull it up. Let me see the fantasy finishes from last year. Let's take a second. Last year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Last year, he was the wide receiver 6, and that was really, really good. Averaged just about that's actually not that good. This must be in standard, because it is. I gotta change that all the time. Let's see if it changes anything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He was wide receiver 5 in the wide receiver finishes last year, and 301 points. He was that tier break that I was talking about earlier, though, where the next player before him, 22 points better, Stephon Diggs. And there's a reason, obviously, we're not talking about guys like Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Tyreke Hill. They're entering their age 30 seasons, respectively. So with CeeDee Lamb, we're talking 25, 30 rushes a game. I'd have to see where their rushing attempts were last year, but if they're rushing the ball any more than 25, 30 attempts a game, I think Dak is only getting like 25 pass attempts. CeeDee Lamb's getting 12 targets. He's getting 6 receptions. I don't know what it necessarily looks like. I just think I don't physically understand how they can replicate his success from last year, given that Mike McCarthy has come out repeatedly and said that they are going to look to establish the run, do it early, and do it often. So just be wary of that when you're drafting your receivers. And again, the same conversations we were having last week. These are our top 7 dynasty wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb is number 4. He's great. He's going to be amazing. I'm just saying, for right now, in that 2 to 3 window, these guys are going to be better than him. Okay, so those are my thoughts. 1, Justin Jefferson. 2, Jamar Chase. 3, A.J. Brown. 4, CeeDee Lamb. 5 for me, Jalen Waddle, wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. He has it all. Speed and plays across one of the best wide receivers in football, Tyreke Hill. That's it. That's all you need. That's all you need. He also is the player on this list who averaged 18.1 yards per reception, which tops out of these top 7 wide receivers that we're talking about today. That's an even bigger discrepancy, right? Every ball this man is catching, he's almost guaranteeing you 2 points per catch. CeeDee Lamb, we talked about it earlier, 1.4, 1.5 points per catch. Okay. This guy can do amazing things. Again, what's his problem? Well, in Miami, there are a few things that I look at in the next 2 to 3 years. Tyreke Hill has recently come out and said that he's going to retire after this season. Is that likely? I don't personally think so, but it's something now to consider. Will Jalen Waddle be a guy that can carry number 1 value when he is the number 1 option? And yes, he did that a little bit in his rookie season, so there's reason to believe that he can do it again. The other big factor that we have to think about is Troy Tagovailoa. Tua Tagovailoa. You just have to think about, the tragedies that have befallen this man at the quarterback position. He was contemplating retirement. Ultimately, he's coming back this season to keep on playing, and I think he's going to be just fine. Don't get me wrong, but we are literally, and I'm not banking on this, I'm not betting on this, I'm knocking on wood. We could be 1 concussion away from him truly being out of the league. Like, it was unheard of what he went through last year. You saw it with your own eyes. And I don't know if you can put your body, your mind, your brain through that type of stuff. And I'm not speaking for him. I'm just saying these are the things that creep into my mind as a fantasy owner. I'm not a medical expert. So don't, by all means, these are just my thoughts. But seriously, like, if Tua's not there, in 2 years, Tyreke Hill's not there in 2 years, what does it look like around him? Miami's done a lot to finagle their picks. What does it look like? Do they go out and get another QB via free agency? I don't know. Like, that's something that you have to consider. So when you're drafting, he's good for this year. Everything's still intact, right? Tua's going to be healthy. Let's speak that into existence. But in 2 to 3 years, dynasty-wise, he's number 5 on my list. Those are just my worries. Again, he's still number 5 on my list. That's very high, okay? We're going to keep mowing him down here. Number 6 on my list, Garret Wilson, wide receiver for the New York Jets. Set the world on fire last year as a rookie. Same questions. How long is Aaron Rodgers going to be his quarterback? We talked about it earlier where Devontae Adams was irrelevant for 2-3 years before he became this guy that we know him as today. And there's this weird hunch, right? Aaron Rodgers does not throw the ball to like younger wide receivers. It's just kind of proven too. There's nothing really to say about it. It's just this weird fact, right? He's got to throw to Garret Wilson. Maybe he's changed in his age, 36th season? I don't know. I hope he does. But there's reason to believe that there's a little bit of worry that can squeeze in there, okay? And those are my thoughts. Those are just my thoughts. Garret Wilson, I think he can do amazing things. I think that offense is good. But also, backtracking a little bit more, New York could be a real big smokescreen this year. All the news, right? All the acquisitions, Packers becoming Jets, Aaron Rodgers, talk of the town, Garret Wilson, second year, breakout candidate from what he was doing in his rookie campaign. Sure. But don't you just feel like it could also crumble too? Like it could just not be anything about what we expected. Like Robert Saleh still trying to make it his claim as a head coach in the NFL. I don't know. I don't know. New York's never been good. They haven't been relevant in the last like 10 years. I don't know. There's reason to believe that I could be a little bit scared about this connection. Garrett Wilson, um, Aaron Rodgers, I can see it happening. I can see it happening where it's just not going to be good. Okay. It's not going to be good. Star Drew, you're never late. You're always on time in my book. And I appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming out. But we were just recapping our top 7 dynasty wide receivers. No Jacob Bartley here today, so it's going to be a little bit of a smaller podcast. Number 1 was Justin Jefferson. Number 2 was Jamar Chase. Number 3, A.J. Brown. 4, CeeDee Lamb. 5, Jalen Waddle. Number 6, Garrett Wilson. And we always say we're ranking our top 7. I'm going to give you 3 guys and make it 9. So let's call it a day after that. Amon-Ra St. Brown comes in at number 7. He's still a guy that's dealing with that quarterback issue, right? They drafted Hendon Hooker in Detroit this year. I'm not saying he's going to be their savior. He's a 25-year-old rookie. Jared Goff played great last year, but you still wonder, fantasy owners, NFL people, just in general, it's like, is Jared Goff the answer in Detroit, or is he just that placeholder for the next big thing? But Detroit made a really good run last year, so there's reason to believe that they can do it again. They made some really good draft picks, a couple of questionable ones. I mean, Jamar Gibbs at number 12 was like a little head scratching to me. Then it makes sense. They trade, Swift. I just thought there might have been some things they could have done on defense there, or maybe more offensively. But whatever, right? I'm not a GM. Amon-Ra St. Brown was great, and clearly there's a lack of options there when you think about it. It's really just Amon-Ra or bust. They got Jamar Gibbs. They got David Montgomery in free agency and via the draft. So I'm excited to see what they do there. A lot of check down work for Jamar Gibbs. But this year, yes, it's reasonable to believe that they are going to get better this year. But I don't know. I don't know. Yes, Chicago and Detroit both look good this year. I love what Chicago did in the draft, drafting a lot of offensive talent. Of course, as we found out, they got DJ Moore via that first round pick, and they also invested some offensive tackle help in the draft as well. I can't wait to see what Justin Fields does with a clean pocket. And if you tuned into our wide receiver, or I should say our Dynasty QB shows, Fields is number 6 in our list. Fields is number 6 on our Dynasty QB list. But yes, back to Amon-Ra St. Brown. He can do it all. He's a PPR monster. He's there to get targets. Jared Goff's favorite target. I like him a lot. T. Higgins comes in at number 8 for me, mainly because you can't just have 2 great wide receivers on one team. As long as Jamar Chase is going to be there, T. Higgins will always have a second seat. Yes, we saw explosive games, but far and few between what we were seeing from Jamar Chase. Higgins is I still think in most drafts, like redraft leagues, if you draft Higgins as your number 1 wide receiver, I still think there's a world where you can be fine. Like your team will be great. But he's, of course, an excellent wide receiver too. And then last but not least, rounding out number 9 was DK Metcalf for me. I thoroughly enjoy me some DK Metcalf. I think the acquisition of Jackson Smith and Njigba only helps him. And, kind of like Justin Jefferson. No, Justin Jefferson, he's only been around for 3 years. But DK Metcalf, you've had this feeling, at least for me, like he's been around the block. He's been in the league for a while. He's only 25. Like his best years are ahead of him as a wide receiver. And I truly think it's untapped. Like, could it be Geno Smith holding him back? I don't know. We thought that was going to be a thing last year. It wasn't. He was still great last year. So I'm not too worried about it. I love what he's able to do on the field. And all of these guys, 1 through 9, are great fantasy options. They are guys that are going in the first 20 picks in dynasty startups. These are guys that should be going in the first 2 to 3 rounds in your redraft leagues. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Number 1, Justin Jefferson. Number 2, Jamar Chase. Number 3, A.J. Brown. Number 4, CeeDee Lamb. Number 5, Jalen Waddle. Number 6, Garrett Wilson. Then we kind of have this mesh pad right here of Amon-Ra at 7, T. Higgins at 8, and DK Metcalf at number 9. Those are your top 7 plus 2 dynasty rankings going into the 2023 season. I always want to know your thoughts. If you listen to this video after the fact, please let us know down in the comments. Stardew always here spitting the truth, spitting the facts. Jaguars look good this year. I mean, Calvin Ridley, we'll see what he got left. 2 years out of the league, but no doubt a talent beyond himself. I'm excited. Trevor Lawrence looked really good last year in spurts. But I also think that 2 years with Doug Peterson and him, they're only going to get better. So, yeah, I like the situation over there as well. Before we close out today's show, I wanted to talk a little bit. My dog's probably going to bark here in a second, so be ready for that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the rookie wide receivers. We all know about Jackson Smith and Jigba. For Dynasty, though, or at least for redraft leagues this year, there's reason to believe that, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett can hold down the fort for one more year, where Jackson Smith and Jigba doesn't make that much of a fantasy impact in year one. But nonetheless, in Dynasty, he's a guy that you should draft. What is that? Tyler Lockett, already aged 30. Unfortunately, I'm 30, right? But yes, that is like the league average age of wide receiver downgrade at that point. So keep an eye on him, obviously. Jordan Addison finds himself in a really great spot playing along the best wide receiver in football. So there's also reason to believe that he can make an instant impact. On the depth chart, there, he could be number 2 behind KJ Osborne to start, but look for him to have a strong finish. Quentin Johnston is a guy that I really like, drafted by by the Los Angeles Chargers. Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, injury woes the last 2 years. Quentin Johnston, kind of like that Mike Williams clone, if you want to say it. They're both big-bodied wide receivers, contested catch guys. Mike Williams, great player, spurts of greatness, but he's been injured on and off since his rookie season, and now we're looking at him at age 28. So it's really like, wow, he's been around that long, huh? Well, he's been on your injured reserve. He's been on your bench. He's been hard to predict. Mike Williams was my kind of like knight in shining armor last year. I stamped my flag on him, and I really wanted him to do great things, and he did. But injuries they always play a factor. So I 100% own that, and it is what it is. But Quentin Johnston is a guy that I really like. Zay Flowers, I hope that we see Lamar return to form. He's already come out and said that he's not going to look to rush the ball that much anymore, or at least Baltimore came out and said that they're going to look to make Lamar throw a little bit more in 2023. Zay Flowers still a gadget guy for me, not someone I'm really into. Jonathan Mingo looks to support Bryce Young down there in Carolina. There's a world where in year 2 he can look to make a really big, instead of a sophomore slump, more like a rookie breakout, second year rookie breakout type of thing, because Adam Thielen, this is how you know that a wide receiver is like contemplating, like, yeah, I'm done. I'm kind of over it. Adam Thielen is already like commentating. I've seen him. I forgot what it was. Was it like a college game or something? I don't know. He was commentating already, which is like, okay, yeah, he's looking for his next adventure, right? So he's there. DJ Chark is there. Bryce Young, I'm hopeful. We already had a whole discussion about him and his frame and all of the things that go with that. I'm hopeful for Bryce Young, which means I'm hopeful for Jonathan Mingo. So I think he's a fine rookie addition to your dynasty lineups. Rashee Rice, clearly, because is Kadarius Toney going to be the guy in Kansas City? I don't know. Rashee Rice could come in and make some impact. Sky Moore, very unproductive in his rookie season. Does he make a jump? Question marks, but obviously any guy playing with the best quarterback in football is somebody that you want. Jaden Reed, wide receiver for Green Bay. We saw a lot of promise last year from guys like Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. But we also saw a lot of unpromise, right? Jaden Reed, second round wide receiver draft pick, he could step in and immediately find himself in a wide receiver 2 discussion, And so that's going to be somebody you want us to talk about. If he establishes that kind of like relationship rapport with Jordan Love, we could see good things for Jaden Reed in the future. And I really like his tape. But no more, and I'll talk about one more guy that I really, really like in this class, and he's probably my favorite sleeper in this class, and that's Michael Wilson, rookie wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. It is well believed that the Arizona Cardinals could go into full tank mode this season. Kyler Murray could be out. They could be tanking for one of those top 2 QBs next year. Those are my thoughts. And if that's the case, they're going to shed DeAndre Hopkins. He's already shopped. He was shopped before the draft. He was shopped after the draft. He's still being shopped. It could be happening before the season. DeAndre Hopkins, bye-bye. Rondale Moore. What more can I say? Not a lot. Michael Wilson is a guy that can come in a garbage year and be the guy on a garbage team that really can put some solid numbers together. I picture him as a guy who's like in your lineup when you're fighting for a playoff spot. Like you're scrumming off the waiver wires and you pick up Michael Wilson like in week 10. And he is just not phenomenal, but he's like solid from week 10 on. And then you get to your fantasy playoffs and you're kind of like, do I put Michael Wilson in my lineup? Like he's been okay. He's been good. And then I can just see him completely going off in garbage games like the rest of the year in playoffs and being a complete, absolute stunner for your redraft team or your dynasty team. I absolutely love what he can do. He dealt with injuries too in college, which is why he kind of fell back in the draft, severe ankle injuries and stuff like that. But I just think that if the Arizona Cardinals truly do tank this year, Michael Wilson is obviously going to get looks. They're going to throw him out there. And it could be an Isaiah Hodgins situation from last year where, and not to say I think Michael Wilson is clearly more talented than Isaiah Hodgins, but Isaiah Hodgins was the only available target on a team that was like good because yes, the New York Giants made the playoffs last year, but he was like the only guy getting targets technically from a bad QB. Kyler Murray, I don't even know. I don't even literally know if he's going to play this season. We could be getting targets from Trace McSorley again. Who knows? But he could be the only guy getting targets on that team. And I just think, we say this time and time again. Yes, you could be playing on a bad team. And I personally always want the best players on the best teams. But I also want the worst players. I also want the best players on the worst teams who get the most volume. And Michael Wilson could be a guy that does it for you down the stretch in the 2023 season. And that's why I like him. He's my favorite wide receiver prospect in this draft class, not only because of where he landed, but because of what I saw in college. And I think he got a lot of rap because of the injuries, and that's why he fell. But I'm stoked. I'm stoked for Michael Wilson. If you're just tuning in to recap today, we talked about our top 7 dynasty wide receivers. And when I say us, I mean just me because no Jacob was here today. But I was able to come through and hold down the fort and do a magnificent job. What can I say? It's what I do. It's what I do. That's way too cocky of me. I'm not going to say that again. But just to recap, Justin Jefferson was our number 1 dynasty wide receiver. Jamar Chase was number 2. CeeDee Lamb at 4. Jalen Waddle at 5. Garrett Wilson at number 6. And Amon-Ra St. Brown at number 7 with T. Higgins and DK Metcalf in the mix there as well. I appreciate you so much for coming out today, especially you, Star Drew, in the comments. Always a truther. He says as the Washington defense runs all over the Cardinals, they may tank this year. Oh, like Washington may tank. You got to clarify that. I truly think that the Cardinals are going to tank this year. That's just my opinion. Washington, I don't know. I'm a guy that likes to believe that Sam Howell, he could do things. I watched some of his college tape. I watched some of his highlights last year. I mean, he's like weirdly quick. He's got a little bit of rushing upside, and he's pretty accurate. Like, there's a world where Sam Howell could just absolutely surprise us. I don't think it's the world we live in, but I think in QB2 leagues, Superflex leagues, Sam Howell might be a viable starter. Like he could be like, I don't know, in that quarterback 20 to 25 range, which in, dynasty leagues or like Superflex leagues might be serviceable for you in bye weeks. But also I think his ceiling could be like 15 to 20 range. Like he's a guy that's in your lineup every week because of what he's doing. He's got Jahan Dotson. He's got Terry McLaurin. He's got an improved offensive line. He's got Eric Bellamy, who did great things with, of course, Patrick Mahomes. I know that. But Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson, like, I don't know. I don't necessarily know. I think Washington's projection is more upward, just because I want to see a good feel-good story, and that's Sam Howell. Whereas Arizona Cardinals, like, more downward trajectory. So those are just my thoughts. But as I said, I appreciate you so much, guys like Star Drew, guys that come up through, or ladies that come through, say hi. I appreciate you all so much. You get a big thank you from me today. Air high fives all around. What can I say? It's what we do around here. We may not be in person, but we're with each other in spirit and in the virtual world. If you heard anything you liked today, please be sure to like and subscribe. It does so much for us. If you didn't hear anything you liked today, come on back. Give us another try. It won't hurt, all right? Just a minute of your time. That's all we ask. But nonetheless, thank you so much for stopping by today. I had a ton of fun talking my top 7 Dynasty wide receivers with you. Go out and get them. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. Now, usually Jacob's here for the hot take. So while I think of a hot take, I'm going to continue talking. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube, where you're watching right now, at First Round Fantasy. You can also find us anywhere you get your podcast, most notably Spotify or Apple Premium. And again, wide receiver rankings today. It was a good show. Can't complain about that. It was a good time. Had a good time. Hot takes incoming. Today's hot takes. I need a little bit of time. Let me play it out. I want it to be something wide receiver. It's nice having a partner. I like to do it on that. Let's go. One hot take. You all have a great Saturday. Thanks for spending it with me. Man, this is tough. Wide receivers. I got one. Welcome back, Chris Godwin, wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This guy is going to be written off because either Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask is going to be throwing him the ball this year. I thought about this a lot, mostly in the last 25 seconds, but also periodically throughout the offseason, and how he just kind of continues to fall because of that QB play. He has been a wide receiver 1, I believe, 4 out of the last 5 years, okay? He is here to stay in your lineups. He will be a wide receiver 1, top 10 for Dynasty, for Redraft League, for Fantasy in 2023. You heard it here first. Chris Godwin. That's your hot take. April or May 13th, 2023, First Round Fantasy Podcast. Take it or leave it. Have a good weekend. Peace.